Welcome to Understanding the Bible Part 3. I'm Paweł Stawarczyk, and today we would like to take a look at the Mesopotamian view of the world. This video is still work in progress. My language may be still more polished than polished. Please bear with me, sorry about that. For some preliminary knowledge about Mesopotamia, take a look at Part 1 and 2. If you ask Americans for an example of some grand epic literature from the past, they probably would say Bill Cosby or Star Trek. The English would point to Shakespeare, Italians to some old Roman writers, and they would see this as old. And in the meantime, the Sumerians would say, hey, why not take a look at Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh is the oldest or earliest grand literary work that is known to humanity today. You're looking at a stone fragment of a tablet containing a passage from Gilgamesh. The tablet comes from the times when Gilgamesh was already popular literature. Guess what year the tablet comes from? Did you guess the year correctly? If you miscalculated by 5 years as punishment, you'll have to watch this video tomorrow again. So, Gilgamesh and other pieces of literature allow us to understand the worldview of the peoples of the nations in Mesopotamia. Their way of looking at life, their way of understanding the meaning of life, their way of approaching religion, gods, and other human beings shaped their actions and their behaviors, but also exerted a huge pressure on the small nation of Israel. And that's why the Bible has to explain many of those issues in order for the Israelites to understand what their faith in the God of the Bible entails. A modern example could be the Navajo Nation of about 300,000 people. With a very old language, traditions, way of life, and adaptation to their environment, today they're heavily under pressure by the culture, mindset, language of the huge majority of Americans around them. In a similar way, the small Israel nation had to deal with the pressure of the culture, of the mindset of their powerful neighbors. And these neighbors had a very aggressive way of understanding the world. Mesopotamians believed that from the beginning of times, gods waged wars, bloody wars, against one another. Gods hated each other, went at each other with abandon, chopped each other to pieces. To your left, you see a very common motif of slaying a powerful dragon god or snake god, where we'll have later a reappearance of that snake or of that dragon in the Bible. Two different traditions explain how humans came about. One of them says that humans were simply a byproduct of those wars among gods. Droplets of blood of those gods mixed with soil. And this is how humans came about. And from now on, they have to eke out survival, somehow trying to dodge those mighty feet of gods, somehow trying to survive in those wars. Another tradition says that gods got tired of those wars and needed servants for the chores. So one of the gods decided to kill another god, mixed his blood with soil, and out of this he shaped humans. From the very starters, humans were meant to be servants who had to survive in the chaos of the whims of gods. So what would be the Mesopotamian concept of life and the world? The world is chaotic, hostile. It's the battleground of gods. Gods are many, and they couldn't care less about the world, humans, about each other. Humans are either a random byproduct, a coincidence, or servants, and they have to figure out how to survive in that chaos. There is no meaning beyond that war and being a servant. Things are random, accidental. The only meaning could be survival in chaos. Fast forward to modern times, and surprisingly, today's powers offer us a similar worldview. The world is a byproduct of forces of nature. It's just an accidental result of clashes of forces of physics or chemistry, at molecular level or at interplanetary level. Another view of the world is that of a clockwork or a machine, when all the parts function smoothly together. There is no beginning, there is no end, and there is no meaning, no direction. But they all function very efficiently. The gods of our modern world are the impersonal forces of nature, laws of physics, that rule over planets and atoms. No wonder that in modern times the God of the Bible is not necessary anymore. As the Soviet Union cheers Yuri Gagarin on his trip into space, an unprecedented feat in human history, the anti-religion propaganda uses this historical event to point out that there is no God. Boga niet, which stands in Russian for there is no God. The humanity of 1960s is at its peak of the worship of technology. Rivers are dammed, cures for diseases are found, more efficient machines are invented. The disastrous toll of pollution and contamination on the natural environment is not observable yet. And who are humans, according to the modern worldview? Well, they're just a random result of cell division and evolution, and by extension of those clashes of natural forces. Love, friendship, patriotism, religion, forgiveness, these are all just names of chemical reactions within our brains. Funny enough, this leads to another god of modern times. This god is human mind. This mind gives us the power over the universe. Step by step, we figure out the mechanism. Step by step, we take possession of yet another law, yet another force. Step by step, we become masters of the universe. Step by step, we're closer to figuring this world out. Step by step, we're becoming closer to becoming gods ourselves. Another part of being human is that we die. As much as we are gods and masters of this universe, death has a power over us that we cannot overcome. But we figured out the universe this much that we know there is nothing beyond death. We live in order to conquer the universe and then decay and be eaten by worms. So here we are, a random product of clashes of forces of nature in a world that itself is a random product of clashes of forces of nature, with no other gods than those forces of nature and ourselves. So what is the meaning of life? We search for answers, and we find different answers. And this is what we come up with as the meaning of life in the modern times. There is no meaning, you just invent it. You just make it up. You just find some reason to continue to get up in the morning, day after day, you a random byproduct of forces of nature in this world that is a random byproduct of forces of nature. And then you will die one day with nothing else to expect after that. So let us sum up the modern concept of life and the world. The world is just an accident. There are gods there. We are an accident too. And life is an effort to survive in this chaos. So we figured out the galaxies and split atom. We can fly within hours to another continent and connect with other people around the globe within seconds. We have uploaded more YouTube videos that single individuals can watch in their entire lifetimes. We are more knowledgeable, more interconnected, more nourished, more medicated, and more entertained than ever in human history. And yet we are not happier than people before us. If we want to understand the Bible, it's because God has a solution to the question about meaning of life. If we want to understand the Bible, it's because God knows how to be happy, really happy. If you'd like to know how God in the Bible answers the questions about the meaning of life, continue with us in that series of presentations, Understanding the Bible. We will then explain the meaningful numbers and then Genesis 1.